another mini video for you today. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get started. Today we'll be using Salute Tilde by Magnolia, and we'll be using B06, B04, and B02 for our color combo today. And this together will create a Tahitian blue. And now for a high intensity, which is totally optional, I'm going to sandwich a C4 on top of my B06, my darkest highlight. Now this is a B06, and if one would blend out with a blending buddy of B04 as a midtone, and then blend from the outer edge of that with a B06, you end up with a very beautiful Tahitian blue. However, if you wanted a high intensity, which is optional, I like to add a C4 on top and sandwich it on top of a small amount of my B06. Do you see how that produces a nice gray tone, a depth that the other did not have? But the gray appears to be sitting on top, so we take the darkest, the B06 again, and just flick it over the top of that to where the C4 begins to be sandwiched in between your two layers of dark. And then blend out with your midtone, your B04, producing a nice smooth blend, and then your highlight. From the outer edge of the B04, you will apply your B02, flicking outward lightly. And just blending that out. And I think you get a very beautiful dark intensity when you added the CO4. The other technique which you're going to see me using today is the flicking method. I've mentioned this in most of my other videos. It's a little wrist action. Put your nib down and gently flick outward. And the end of the nib lifts and becomes a little lighter at the distal end. So we're going to be coloring Tilde's clothes today with Tahitian blue. I usually stamp my images with a Memento ink. It's a dye ink. This is very compatible with your alcohol ink markers, both Copic and Shinhan. We're going to be coloring the skirt and the hat. I'll do detailed coloring on the little skirt and then speed coloring on the hat. I'm going to be plotting out where I'm going to want my shadows. And I usually do this with my highlight, because that way I can always change it if I need. It gives me an opportunity to look at the image and to decide if that is really where I'm going to want to have my shadows and my highlights. Because it's light, it can always be colored over the top, and you can always alter it if you decide that you prefer to have the shadow in a different area. And now I'm going to take a B4 and just kind of darken those to make sure that I like the effect. You can use the option of just at this point going to your B06 if you want. I'm cleaning off the edge of my nibs because sometimes they will pick up and transfer color. When I'm blending, I really don't always want that darker transferred too much into my lighter areas, so I like to frequently clean off my nibs. Now I'm applying my B06 just on my very dark shadow area now. This will be an area that does not get the light source. And I have my light source coming from the front on Tilde And I'll blend out slightly with my mid-tone. This is a light flicking method. It's sometimes hard to see on video, but it's just small flicking motions. Again, frequently cleaning off the nib of my pen and flicking inward toward my highlight. I like to flick toward the highlight on both sides rather than just covering over the top. I like to flick inward. It gives a little added brightness and highlight to my lightest area. I'm applying a little bit of shadow right under where my buttons will be, where a belt would be, buttons, a pocket, anything like that. I like to add a little extra shadow just under the areas. Now this is the high intensity, and again it is optional. And we're just laying down a little C4 right on top of your darkest color combo, which was the B06. And now I'm going to top that gray off with my B06 again. Now you'll notice I did choose, because blue is a cool tone, I chose to use a cool gray, which would be my C tone. You know, you have neutral, you have tone, you have warm, but because blue is a cool color, I chose to use my cool gray. And I like to keep looking at my image, kind of take a moment, hold it back, take a look at your image, see if there's anything you need to rework. At this point, it's just putting those final touches into it. Now we did the detailed coloring on this image, but for the hat we will do the same process, but I'm going to put it on warp speed here, and but you can see that I will just be following the same pattern of using my color combos that I used in the skirt. You know, your midtones should average about 50% of your colored image. I think always less is more, to have your high intensity or your shadow area to be smaller, usually, and about 50% to be your midtone. Looks usually about right, unless you're going for a special effect where you're trying to cast your image, say in a more shadow for suspense or something like that. Otherwise, about 50% midtone is average, and then a little more highlight than you would shadow. Now on this, I'm just darkening those shadow areas again, making my high intensity with my C4. And then we'll top it off with the B06. Because the gray does have a tendency to sit on top, so you will want to make sure it's a sandwich. Your shadow, your gray, and your shadow side again. And then always blending out just a little afterwards. Not enough to lose that intensity. And so this is our finished image. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll give it a try.